Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Singapore International Festival of Arts 2021 and to this artist conversation, music, avatars, and something else with the Observatory, Nada, and Brandon Tay. This program is presented as part of the Festival House, the epicenter of the festival, which this year features talks, workshops, performances, and installations that explore the idea of care, compassion, and community, sparked by our collective isolation during the pandemic. My name is Fezhah Maznan, one of the producers for the festival, and I'm very pleased to be joined by Chiwai, Dharma, Cheryl Ong, Brandon Tay, Rizwan Putra, and Sapan Johari. So, how about you guys at the Observatory? How are you doing?
I think we are pretty okay. Definitely excited about what we are presenting for what's upcoming for SIFA, and tightening of measures. Well, we know how we got here. I'm not sure how we're going to get out again.
That's true. Brandon?
I'm feeling a bit glitchy, I think. So I think I'm just juggling between the projects. I think I'm just trying to keep every project in a different headspace. I think that's the most challenging part.
I see. So, in a way that the pandemic that we're experiencing kind of inspired, I don't know whether that's the right word for it, your works for SIFA 2021, like Demon States for the Observatory, Brandon Tay and Irfan Kasban, and T0701, which is also known as Toyo, right? By Zukma, a collective that is made up of Nada, Brandon Tay, and Zulfali Rashid Beg. So could maybe either one of you begin first to share with us what you were each responding to could you share with us what you were each responding to in your experience with the time that we find ourselves in, and how does that reflect in your work? Brendan?
So is the question about how the pandemic has affected me or affected my process or has inspired the work?
I think it's about more on the work. So how does the pandemic how's your experience with the pandemic kind of translate into your work?
I think the pandemic has kind of made the idea that dystopias are more closer to being realized than we think. I think then that has actually made me think about what this idea of a dystopia is and what different manifestations have been manifested and what is a specific dystopia that I can imagine and what my collaborators can imagine as well. So I think thinking about that was the thing that was like propelling like both these kind of collaborations.
I see. And for Nada?
I think it's like for us, this whole idea of dystopia, a very sci-fi approach towards our creative process, the pandemic kind of helped contextualize things, it's like the seed. And with that, it kind of help us create something which is more relatable to the wider audience instead of something so vague or something that just the three of us are deeply engrossed or obsessed with. Yeah, so that's the starting point, the seed, yeah.
But do you want to kind of elaborate a bit more about maybe what Toyol is and in its relation, so to give a bit more context?
Initially, we were just going down the line of, because during the circuit breaker, we were all quite obsessed and quite impressed by the wonders of the delivery riders in Singapore. It's delivering everything for us as we were just staying at home, making sure we are safe. But these guys put their lives out there to make sure things still go on. And then, that's the foundation of it. And then it's I don't know, then there was one conversation where we thought of getting the whole idea of superstitions and rituals and how, let's say, the psyche of, especially when you talk about Nada, or whole concept of haunting or the spectre or hauntology, how we can have that part, that element manifests in the narrative, in the storyline, and in this day of a highly high-tech world, everything is based on technology. How do we think about ghosts or superstitions in that sense. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So I think it's also, I mean, you guys are kind of looking at more on like maybe even an external manifestation, whereas for demon states, you're kind of having a journey within into. Could you maybe share us a bit more about your time in the pandemic and how that kind of manifested in this project, perhaps?
I think for us, we came up with the music for Demon States during the circuit breaker because the plan was actually to record the next album with our collaborator Koichi Shimizu. So he was supposed to come to record our new album, and then the measures all came down. He couldn't fly, so that was kind of put on hold. And we had this material that we did with him in the studio prior to that. So we started listening to those, like the improv sessions that we did with him, and decided to take some of the material out. He also did some remixes of that material. For ourselves, we couldn't go to the studio. So that period was quite trying because I think none of us could play as usual at home. We have limitations, volume, instrument. Yeah, so we started to come up with material that we were able to record at home, and we passed stems to each other and came up with something. So the idea of demon states is actually different manifestations of demons in all our psyches. Yeah.
Within and beyond. I guess, it's something that we have always been confronting with, the external, the internal, and I think it was heightened during the circuit breaker period. And like what Saf said, it gave us some time to dig deeper and understand this even more comprehensively, and started to compartmentalize certain ideas a little bit more succinctly, and transmitted it into the music that we wrote together.
I think it was kind of obvious link, Brandon, because you're thinking about dystopia and the world, and or in this kind of this environment, right? And I guess it kind of makes sense, the inner, outer, kind of the world together, hence the bridge, I guess, for this project. How were you kind of assessing what was perhaps the way in for you for either of these projects?
Okay, with each of these projects, there is an aspect of world building. So that means, in Toyo, there's 3 layers to a world, or maybe 4. I'm not sure. And with Demon States, there's 4 layers to the world, and maybe 1 meta world that connects it. So I think the trick is to really kind of put yourself in a position where you can imagine any aspect of that world. I think that's the important thing when you're handling a project that is utopian in any sense, whether it's utopian or dystopian. I think internally when you're constructing it, you have to kind of know what are the elements that are in there. Yeah. In your imagination before you can manifest it, I guess.
Because we kind of have spoken quite a bit of things right now. I mean, you kind of also shared about how your process was in terms of in creating the world, in creating the music during pandemic. What about you guys? How was it? How did it affect the way you work? Or you were just took a downtime and then came back only after everything kind of settled?
Thankfully for us, especially the 3 of us, even Nada, the both of us, even before pre-pandemic, we often work in silos. It's only when it comes to staging something, then we get into a space together. Yeah, so I guess since you mentioned, it's been 5 years since Zukma has come together to put something out. Yeah, so that is the exciting part. But then it's also the challenge of that limited time. We have only this much time to put things physically on stage. And that's what we have been discussing, or what we have been creating on our own, integrating them to make sure it's one seamless experience. Yeah, so that's the main challenge, and that's what we are doing right now, piecing things together.
Cool. I can't wait to see. Uh, I want to kind of go back to the observatory, I guess. You guys are celebrating your 20th year this year. Congratulations. That's quite a milestone. And I guess what was the experience like in terms of working with mixed reality work? Kind of curious about that.
It's my first time experiencing it myself, you know. I think a couple of months ago, when Brandon came to the studio with what we call the Oculus, the goggles, right? And I put it on. I was like, whoa, you know, it's another world, and it's definitely something that I think can how to say, can bring about this experiencing of what we do musically to another level. It's hard to explain it in words, but I think it takes you to another dimension. Yeah.
I think it's also the first time we have worked with VR. And it's something that we have talked about toying with in recent times. And then the pandemic happened. And of course, a lot of our tours and a lot of our performances got cancelled, right? So we were also kind of thinking of different ways to then present our music and present our work. And we thought that, yeah, it was a good opportunity to also get into this. So this is somewhat like actually an experiment for ourselves as well. Yeah, just to also understand the medium better, understand what the collaboration entails. Yeah, and see what we can do from there.
I'm guessing this is also the first time you guys are also collaborating with Irfan Kasban to create the set.
Yeah.
So how's that been like also? I mean, there's the VR world, and then there is this also other, you know, you're kind of also staging the spaces in order to go into that virtual reality. So how has that been like?
I think I've worked with Irfan on another project late last year. So I was kind of familiar with his touch, with his sensibilities on spatial design and lighting and small little details that he's pretty good at. So that's why when we brought him into the picture, there were some ideas that we initially had in mind, but we gave, in fact, everyone a lot of space to develop their practice in this project, in this collaboration. So initially we did have some markers or some very vague beacons to move towards, but we didn't want to impose too much. So because we wanted the project to grow as well, in a way where everyone has a strong stake in it. So he brought a contribution that I think for ourselves we didn't expect as well. And we're also learning as we go along, and like what Cheryl said, it's an experiment to understand how music can be experienced differently, especially if you're talking about 20 years of Observatory, and how we have progressed, and how else can this kind of music be presented or be sold in an industry that's already so saturated and piratized, you know. So it's all these things coming together and learning and observing at the same time, and hopefully coming with something new. So yes, very true that it's an experiment at the moment.
Thank you. I guess my question now to Rizman. I was wondering how is it then? I mean, we're talking about these building experiences, and you're kind of directing the stage performance, and I was wondering what maybe the consideration in terms of, you know, because for Toyo there is the live performance, there is also the web browser experience. How does that influence, or how does that kind of how's your approach for directing then, in consideration with all these other elements in the work, or whether it's quite standalone? Yeah.
Well, to begin with, having to rehearse with actors in a space is quite a luxury because it's hard to kind of like produce a show where you get a lot of actors in the space and making them do wild things, right? So the most challenging part of this piece is to create meanings out of nothing, because we don't have the actual Toyol. Because it's a diverse cast, right? They all comes from different cultures, so their understanding of Toyol is pretty different. So everyone had to come to a kind of like on the same ground, like what Toyol means to them. So the idea of them trying to understand, that's one thing. And having to work with multimedia is quite a challenging process for them because they've never worked with multimedia except for maybe Gloria, who was involved in the previous production. And yeah, so it's very exciting and confusing also at the same time, but I think it's all part of the process. Yeah, and working with fresh young actors is quite a thing, because they have a lot of things to, their energy is packed to the maximum whenever we come for rehearsal, and me like being an old director sitting there like, wow, good, can you do more, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's exciting.
But come on, that's not the Rizman we know. Come on. We've all seen you perform, Rizman. Come on. Okay, thank you for that. I guess then we're talking about, so in a way, how should your audience member approach the work then? Does it complement each other in terms of the stage performance and the web browser, or is it you can actually kind of experience on your own each one, whichever you prefer? Is there a way to go into the work as an audience member? What do you think?
I mean, for the web browser, because I think just before this, Brandon was talking a lot about the world building for both projects. Yeah, I think for the web browser, it's more for the audience to experience this world on its own. Because when it's on stage for the live show, the world is the context of the show. That's where things happen. But if for the web browser, you can explore the world on your own. Yeah.
And so for Demon States, there's going to be four different, what do you call it, like pods or stations? And what's the preferred route? What's the recommended route?
The random route.
The random route. Brandon, is there a recommendation?
I believe people should be able to make their own decisions. So,
Okay.
No recommended route.
So, do you guys have any questions for each other at this point?
How does the process differ? Especially, this is to Brandon, because both one got demons, then the other got Toyol. So it's almost like coming from the same space, this haunting place.
I don't think. Yeah, I get what I mean. Like, it's not that. I think the understanding of what is supernatural or what is demonic, in both cases, is very different. Yeah, I think in the case of Toyol, it's more rooted in idea of. I guess maybe it's the same in a certain way, because there's this connecting idea of agency in both works. So in Toyol also, there's what is agency in techno-capitalistic society, and in Demon States, I think it's a more a tighter question about what is your agency, lah. I think maybe that's how I choose to approach it. Yeah, so I think in terms of what is the demonic and what is the Toyol, that would be how I choose to define the differences in each project.
Wondering, with the future uncertain, and there's always this very big emphasis on digital works, if everyone's gonna, I was wondering what's your, and with your experience in this work, perhaps also, what do you think the kind of future of performance making would be for you?
It really feels very uncertain in that aspect. Yeah, for us, a big part of what we do is about playing live, and it's pretty much taken away for now. Yeah, so we are looking into other means of how to present our work. And we've tried digital streaming, online streaming, but somehow the energy is a bit flat, doesn't come through. So we're still researching, I would think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with the recent presentations that we have done, we have been trying different formats of presenting work. So like, for example, Black Haji, we have done it in a radio format. Play Freely, we have done in an exhibition format. And for this work as well, it's going to be mixed reality. So moving forward, I guess we do want to pursue combinations of these formats. And of course, if we can play live again, yeah, that would be great. But in the meantime, it's a good time and space to explore all these things. Yeah.
So the question is about how technology has affected my process.
But you're all about the technology, no?
No. I'm not about the technology. So I think technology always changes. So like pursuing technology for technology's sake is always limited by what the technology can present. So for example, like let's say we talk about things like AR or like things like that. Like what you can say with the medium is dictated by the medium itself. So I don't think that as people who create things, we should be limited by what we are creating with, and have some. I think it's more important to have some kind of core that you can use the correct tools with, I guess. And I think increasingly, like the tools that we are using are all we have less like ownership of them. For example, let's say like the tools that we use to make augmented reality, for example, or like the tools that we use to create like photo manipulation. Like we don't actually like we've gone from a format, and I think this happens in music as well, where we actually own a physical or a piece of information that is ours. We now actually are transitioning to a system where we own access to a cloud, where parties other than ourselves are actually in ownership of these tools, and they change at any time. So I think that makes it even more important that you are not dictated by the mediums that you use. So I'm not about technology, lah. You sure?
No, I mean, okay, I wasn't being very I was being very careless about it. I guess, I mean, when we think about you, I mean, for me especially, it's always about, how your new media work and things. And I've always kind of been very fascinated by your work. Hence the whole, you're all about the technology. But then, a huge part of what you do is also that is kind of grounded with performance, and I'm guessing, I mean, words of wisdom there, in terms of to not be ruled, to not be too governed by what technology can offer, but then to also find a core. I find those are very wise words. Thank you.
I mean, like these days when we speak about or we talk about technology, especially at this time of the pandemic, I don't know, it's like we tend to always fall onto this idea that, we're going to replace this experience with like the experience of performing to a full capacity audience. And I think that's a problem. Yeah, I mean, it's like in terms of with technology and performance making, that has always been going on with or without the pandemic, right? There's a continuum there. It's like with whatever Brandon has been doing for the past 10 years or whatever he's going to do for the next 10 years. But now it's like, like Dharma said, like, we miss playing live. All of us do miss playing live. But sometimes like with this hole or this heartbreak of missing playing live, we tend to rely on technologies like, how can we use technology to replace this gap or fill this gap? And I don't know, it's kind of bleak and it's kind of sad as I say it. But I think one way is to also stop thinking towards that direction and like not see technology as the solution or as the only solution to replace this experience of performance making in times of the pandemic.
I agree with you. And I think to kind of think about technology as a a mode of or a replacement. I think, or like what you say, a solution. I agree. It's hard. It's hard to compare apple or oranges together, and I think at the same time also to kind of strive towards this live performance making, the energy, the spirit, the all these sensations that we get when watching or performing live. I think perhaps we might need to think about new parameters, right? New yardsticks in which we think about performance, perhaps. Yeah. You think, Risma?
I don't know. I feel like through uncertainties, I think we can find positivity. I guess at the end of the day, we are all artists, and the power of creation will come from us, and we create anything, be it whether visual arts or music or anything. I think at the end of the day, we all have this craving, for creating something, even though we can't do something, but at the end of the day, we find something to do. So we just have to continue creating no matter what. Yeah.
Does that kind of put you into a sort of existential crisis as a live performer?
Not really. It's just that I find new ways of doing things, Yeah. So like right at the moment I can't perform that much, but I tend to bring the energy to my drawings, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a room full of people with multi-talent, so I feel very blessed. You guys are always kind of. I think being that wearing so being able to kind of express yourself in many different forms, I think that seems to be the way forward, because what cannot be expressed here kind of gets manifested into another form. Yeah, I think that's all about the time that we have. Thank you so much for sparing time. I know all of you guys are busy. So any last words or any words for your audience, perhaps, since this is going to be released before each of your shows, or your presentations?
I think whatever everybody mentioned just now about not using technology to replace the live performance element is really important. So this time around, we are trying something new. We hope you can come and experience this. And we would love to get feedback from everybody after they experience the show.
Is there a feedback email account that people should write into?
Yeah, but it's a learning experience for us. So we also would like to know how audience members react to this new format.
Yeah, it's also about connection, right? It's all forms of connection. You use technology to connect. You use live performance to connect. You use your devices. That's what we do. We still want to connect in various ways, be it to 50% of the allowed capacity, or even one-on-one. So we still find ways to try to connect with people with what we do.
Yeah, and I think in a way, the festival this year kind of find different ways to kind of stay connected. I think it's just not about. We do have our big presentations and in kind of more traditional theatre spaces, but I think there's also quite a number where we're thinking outside of the black box. With your works and also with some of the other presentations as part of the festival. Thank you everyone for joining me and for sparing the time for this. I look forward to both of your works at the festival as well as many others, I'm sure. And so see you at SIFA 2021.